All right, imagine. Let's imagine this. We don't have to imagine because it's reality, but let's just imagine. Like let's play the imagination station game. Here we go. So a legislature passes one of the biggest budgets in its state's history, and we're looking at $55.9 billion that will shape schools and roads and hospitals and taxes for millions of people. Cameras flash, press releases fly, and politicians declare victory for responsible governance. But the real story is buried in 3,700 pages of legislation that almost no one had the time to read. We're going to talk about this in just a second. Stay with us.
The curtains rise, the lights burn bright. You're blinded now, can't see the fight. Smoke and mirrors, they lead the way. Fooling hearts night after day. Welcome to the show, it's all pretend. The smiles, the lies, the perfect end.
Welcome back to Breaking the System. This is episode 71, talking about the 2026 fiscal year for Illinois and the cloaking device that's been installed. So today we're pulling back one of the curtains of one of the most effective tools modern legislature use to move major policy and minimal public scrutiny. This is the Budget Implementation Bill, better known in Illinois as the BIMP, the BIMP, right? Not the pimp, the BIMP, right? Government loves their acronyms. There's an acronym for everything, right? It's not just technical paperwork. It becomes a legislative cloaking device allowing sweeping new taxes and regulations to slip through under the cover of must-pass budget deadlines. And Illinois likes to do this stuff in the middle of the night when you or I were sleeping, right? Just what they do. So every spring, the state capitals across the country pull off a magic trick, and they stand in front of flashing cameras and they hold up a freshly signed budget and announce that the government is funded and the bills are paid, and the democratic process has worked exactly as intended. But if you want to understand how power actually operates in the modern era, you have to stop looking at the press conferences and start looking at the middle of the night. You have to look at the mechanisms designed specifically to keep you from seeing the gears that turn until the machinery is already ground right past you. In early June of this year, the Illinois General Assembly rammed through that historic $55.9 billion state budget. The headline number was what the politicians wanted you to debate. But the actual structural mechanics, the raw policy, the new revenue streams, the sudden regulatory shifts didn't live in the main budget bill. They lived in the BIMP, the BIMP, a companion piece exceeding 3,700 pages, introduced and passed with less than 48 hours for review. And like I said, our government, especially in Illinois, I'm not for sure how you other states are, but I'm sure you're the same, is you try to ram thousands and thousands and thousands of pages through at the last second in the middle of the night, so we, the public, have no time to read it, let alone understand, because of all of the legal jargon that's in there, right? And then we're supposed to vote for that or expect you to just know what you guys are doing and believe in you. Like, oh, we're going to believe in our government, right? That's what they want, okay? So to understand why the BIMP exists is to understand how modern democratic systems are systematically bypassed. And by definition, a budget implementation bill is supposed to be a technical map. It is meant to tell state agencies exactly which accounts to draw from to execute the budget that was just voted on. It is supposed to be administrative. And instead, it has been weaponized into an ominous shield. Tucked deep inside those pages were entirely brand new, highly specialized taxes and regulatory overhauls targeting the modern digital economy. All that stuff that they're wanting to ram through, whether if it's Project 2026 or Project 2030 or Project 2035, whatever it is, right? But what it is, it's taxes on digital assets and their transactions, cryptocurrency exchanges, specialized levies on social media platforms and fantasy sports wagering, alongside shifts in how prescription drug costs are tracked and handled. So take a step back again and think about all of the other legislation that they're trying to pass. What is really popular right now? Well, cryptocurrency is really popular. But they want to get everybody digital currency. They want to force everybody into digital currency. The exchanges, when you're exchanging currency digitally from one place to another, as of right now, there's not much of a tax on that transaction. It's, for better or worse, it's almost free most of the time. And so now they want to put a tax on that. Of course they do, right? Because here before long, that's going to be mainstream, and every transaction that takes place is going to be digital. Look at what a lot of companies are doing now. A lot of mom and pop shops. What are they having to do? They're having to put on a fee every time that you use your debit card or a credit card or whatever it is, because there's a tax, there's a fee that's based off of that, whether if it's coming from Visa or MasterCard or Discover, or if it's coming from the government, because they've imposed a tax on those corporations, and now they're offsetting that by, giving it to the little guy, okay? And so that's going to be mainstream. And they want to start taxing those revenues, all right? The other big one is social media platforms. They're wanting to start taxing places like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. And so like any time that some type of transaction has took place, or they even want to tax you just having those accounts, because where is the free market as far as ideas and the exchange of ideas? It's on social media. So if they tax it to the point where you can't afford it, now you don't have access to those free thinkers, to those ideas that are technically free across the internet. Okay. Another big one is fantasy sports wagering, right? It's becoming very, very big, and they're wanting to have taxation on those wages that are being placed. Okay. So a lot of big taxes that are coming down the pipeline, and they want to get those taxes ahead of the system, right? The system that they're going to force us to be a part of. All of that digital space that's being rammed through in these data centers, right? Yeah, that's being built. Okay. They want to put the taxes beforehand. Okay. So when we're coerced, not forced, but when we're coerced, we're eased into these things, we're already paying a little bitty tax. And then in a few years, they raise it, and we're just paying a little bitty tax on top of that, and another little bitty tax until it becomes just a little bitty tax, right? It's exactly the way that they do it every year. Okay, think of the tax, the property tax on your house. Does it ever go down? Every year, what? It goes up just a little bit, right? That's how they play their game. Okay. So they're getting ahead of the curve on this in Illinois, okay? So in a healthy legislative framework, such measures would typically require months of standalone committee hearings, expert testimony, public debates, revisions, and transparent notes. And the cloaking device eliminates much of that by tying them to the must-pass budget clock. Tick-tock, 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 right? And lawmakers face an all-or-nothing choice: accept the package or risk shutting down core services. But I bet your politicians still make a wage, right? They still make a living, right? It's not like Governor Pritzker is going to give up his paycheck when the government shuts down. No. And we're going to get to that in just a minute, okay? And so this isn't an accident. And it isn't required to Illinois or one party, or unique to Illinois or one party. It is a feature of legislative design under pressure. So if we take a step back and breathe within the history, the roots of these mechanisms trace to early 20th century efforts to bring order to government spending. After the Progressive Era, states and the federal government created more systematic budget processes. Oh, we like that, right? More processes. Yep. Makes for a wonderful day. Illinois, like others, developed tools for technical fixes, transfers, statutory adjustments, agency clarifications. What started as housekeeping, well, it evolved, okay? And in 1974, Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act at the federal level formalized reconciliation intended as a limited tool to align revenues and spending with budget resolutions. It was first used modestly, but guess what? Just like all government, it grew dramatically. And by the 1980s and 1990s, ominous packages became common for navigating deadlines and polarizations. Left versus right? That polarization. Who's going to fight who? Right? They don't want us all getting along because that's bad. It's bad for government if we all get along. Remember that. So in Illinois, the BIMP tradition mirrors this national pattern. Budget Implementation Act provides the statutory language to make appropriations work. And over time, they absorbed broader policy. The state's history of fiscal strain, pension obligations, revenue volatility, and the notorious 2015-2017 budget impasse that left no full spending plan for over 2 years amplified incentives for decisive action. Okay. And during that impasse under Governor Bruce Rauner, delayed budgets and veto overrides highlighted deep divisions. When budgets finally pass, companion legislation helped bridge the gaps. Subsequent years saw BIMPs used for a variety of purposes, including program exchanges or expansions inserted with limited advance notice. So they don't have to have advance notice. Like we, the public, we don't have to know that these things are coming down the pipeline. They just do it. They throw it in there, right? And so this pattern isn't isolated. Across the U.S., states and Congress use similar vehicles. Federal nimbus or full omnibus appropriations bills routinely bundle multiple funding areas with policy riders. The Massive Consolidation Appropriations Act of 2021, for example, exceeded 5,000 pages and incorporated unrelated measures along core funding, passed after minimal review time. Remember, they try to do this at the very last second, in the middle of the night, okay? And let's look at that last sentence. There's some really nice words that I like in there. Incorporated unrelated measures alongside the core funding. So whatever they're calling this, they throw a lot of bullshit in this as well that has nothing to do with it. And they call it something else. Okay? and it's all wrapped up. It's all beautifully displayed in this nice package with a bright, shiny bow, and it looks and sounds beautiful. But how many of us actually get to read 3,700 pages or 5,000 pages in less than 36 hours or in less than 48 hours, right? There's not a lot of us that can do that, let alone understand the language and the verbiage that goes along in this stuff, okay? Well, in Nebraska, policy proposals have increasingly found their way into budget bills, sparking debate over whether this aids holistic decision-making or distracts from core appropriations. New York's strong executive budget process has long concentrated power, with critics arguing it sidelines regular legislative order. Proponents of these approaches argue pragmatism. And modern budgets are intricate ecosystems involving thousands of programs, federal matching funds, and statutory alignments. Tying policy to implementation ensures coherence. New revenues or rules activate alongside funded initiatives. In Illinois' FY2026 case, new targeted revenues helped balance the largest budget in state history amid uncertainties, avoiding broad-based income or sales tax hikes. Let's pause. So, instead of cutting the fat, cutting the waste, looking at what we don't need as a state, what are we going to do? We're going to ram this shit in the middle of the night in language that we don't understand, right? Giving Illinois one of the largest budgets in state history amid uncertainties. Let's cut the fat. What are we not using? What are we overspending on? Maybe we shouldn't be paying for X, Y, and Z. Like if we don't have the money to pay for, let's say, illegal immigrants, then maybe we shouldn't be paying for illegal immigrants. Because that's what they are. They're here illegally. They shouldn't be getting our tax money, period. Right? Okay? So if we don't have the money for this stuff, and there's uncertainty, why are we passing the largest budget bill in state history? Well, because if we don't, what are they going to do? They're going to increase sales tax, and we're going to have this huge tax hike on sales tax or income tax. And more money is going to come out of our pocket because our politicians can't and don't know how to handle money. I mean, let's be honest. J.B. Pritzker is a billionaire. Do you think that he gives a damn if you are struggling at $40,000 a year or at $60,000 a year or at $100,000 a year? He gives zero crap about you or I. Okay? He does. Let's be honest. Don't lie to yourself. He doesn't care. And he doesn't know how to handle the money that's coming in. Because if he did, we wouldn't be passing the largest budget in state history in the middle of the night with 3,700 pages of crap that we should just be wiping our butt with. Okay? So defenders note that without such tools, gridlock could worsen. Oh my, we don't want gridlock to worsen. Oh, right? Delaying paychecks for state workers, funding for school or for infrastructure. Nowhere in there did it say, oh, well, the politicians, they're not going to get their paychecks. Because they still do, right? And they will. So, state workers, zero for you. Funding for school, zero for you. Roads and pipelines and electric lines, zero for you. But your politicians, guess what? Money, right? Make that make sense. Make it make sense, okay? It doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, left side, right side. I don't care what you are. Make it make sense, because it doesn't. Okay? Critics countered that the scale and timing undermine deliberation. When thousands of pages drop at the 11th hour, even dedicated lawmakers and the public struggle to scrutinize the impacts. A vote against controversial elements risks derailing essential services, creating a structural trap. Ooh. This dynamic appears in both party eras of control, reflecting institutional incentives more than ideology. And the system doesn't break down solely from disagreement. Mechanisms like the BIMPs allow bypasses so the public has less chance to engage granular choices. They don't want us to choose. They want the choices to be picked for us. Multiple choice. Is it A, B, C, or D? Well, I would like F. Where is F on the page? Because it's not there, right? Okay. Oh, this one's got me all heated up tonight. Tell you what. Illinois' experience from biennial to annual budgeting under the 1970 Constitution, those structural deficits and impasses show how pressure shapes adaptation. So one side pressures the other side, and both sides pressure the public, because all of this has to pass so that everything can get funded, so that state workers can get paid, so schools aren't shut down, so the roads can get fixed. Because let's be honest, the politicians don't use hardly any of that. They don't send their kids to school, right? They don't send their kids to public education. They have private tutors. They send them to their private places, okay? And they're going to drive on the roads that they're going to drive on. They're not going to drive on the country roads, the rural roads like you and I drive on. They give zero crap about it, okay? So they want to pressure us. They want to pressure the system. The system pressures us into making sure that this stuff passes in the middle of the night. So let's zoom out further. These tactics reflect broader tensions in representative government. As associates and economies complexify with digital assets, here we go, with healthcare costs and interconnected revenues, lawmaking volume grows. Efficiency tools help governments respond, but they can distance citizens from decisions on taxes and rules shaping daily life. So they want to distance you and I from the rules, from our rules that keep us within society in a daily life, because it's too much for you guys to understand, right? We just want you to pay your taxes. We want it to be automatically. So it automatically comes out of your paycheck and you don't know what you're paying, right? They want that. They don't want transparency. Because if transparency is there, you and I, we fight back together. And they don't want that cohesiveness. They want us going at each other the whole time, okay? And if we're doing that, we can't make decisions on taxes and the rules that are shaping our daily life. They don't want that. So with historical parallels abound, early American budgeting was chaotic until reforms centralized and systematized it. Yet each reform traded some transparency, and it traded some deliberation for functionality. Okay, so here's a good question. Does the machinery serve accountability, or does it insulate the power? Think about it. Does the machinery serve accountability, or does it insulate the power? Meaning, if they're passing this stuff in the middle of the night, at the last minute, with thousands and thousands and thousands of pages being rammed down our throats, okay, is accountability being served within the machine, within the system, or is that insulating the power in that all of these little nuances, all of these little things can get passed and nobody's to blame because it was built in and you voted for it and you let it pass. You did. You let it pass, right? That's what they're going to say, okay? So that's a good question to start with. And in the end, the cloaking device reveals how democratic systems balance speed against scrutiny. They enable action in complex times, yet they risk eroding informed consent. It does. Absolutely it does. And so the gears turn, often inefficiently, sometimes invisibly, producing outcomes that define public priorities, some trade-offs, and possibly some burdens, normally in the form of taxes or some type of money they're taking from us, okay? So let's end with our critical thinking question or questions. In an era of complex governance, and tight legislative calendars, how should we weigh the value of efficient lawmaking against the demands of public scrutiny and debate, especially when major policy shifts right alongside essential funding? And that's a big one. Because I know, the more complex the government gets, the more that this stuff is going to happen. And the more that we move into this digital age, the more that we will get to weigh in less and less on efficient lawmaking. Okay? Especially when they're going to start taxing things like all of our social media. Because people that are poor or impoverished, if they don't know where their next meal is coming from, how are they going to afford to pay their monthly subscription to Instagram or to TikTok or to Facebook? And they're not. And like we said in the beginning of this, where are all of the free ideas coming from? Where are we exchanging ideas within society right now? It's within those systems. It's within the TikToks and the Instagrams and the Facebooks, okay? So we need to make sure that our government is not passing taxes and mandates and extra costs onto us, the consumers, just to be able to use those things. We want to make sure that those things remain just as they are, free for all people across the board. Red, white, black, blue, left, right, doesn't matter, okay? We have to have the free exchange of ideas, right? And if the government can connect just like that, you and I, no matter how we disagree, we have to be able to connect and see and talk about and converse about what our government is doing, especially in the middle of the night, especially when we're talking about thousands and thousands of pages, right? Because if they don't have us in the best interest, in the best mind, we have to be able to come together and stop that, okay? And so the last question for the night is, what mechanisms might better serve both effective government and informed consent? What mechanism or mechanisms might better serve both effective and efficient government and informed consent? Okay? So with that, that was this episode of Breaking the System. Leave the comments, like, subscribe, share, absolutely share. I love it when you guys share, okay? We'll see you guys next time. God bless. Have a good night. We're out. Peace.
Yeah. It don't rot overnight, you know. It fades. Slow. Silent. Sweet. Like poison in the ink. Yeah, we build our walls out of words and pride. Now the cracks run deep where the truth once lied. Screens for temples, code for creed. We worship the lie that feeds our feet. Every echo shake